Gary Coleman became a massive star as a child on different strokes, earning him millions, but his parents and business advisor embezzled most of his fortune over the years. Once he turned 18, he sued them and won a measly $1.3 million settlement, by which point his career had faded and the medical bills were racking up. As an adult, Coleman struggled financially and battled constant health issues from congenital kidney disease, the condition that resulted in his 4'8" height due to the medications used to treat it when he was a child. His final years were marked by bitterness toward Hollywood and especially his parents. He once said, "If I had the choice, I wouldn't be famous. I'd be a happy, healthy, regular guy." When he suffered a fatal brain hemorrhage after a bad fall in 2010, Coleman had written in his will that he wanted no funeral, no wake, and that his parents should not be informed about or allowed to attend any memorial services held in his honor. While filming in Atlanta in 2023, Jamie Foxx suffered a sudden life-threatening stroke brought on by a brain bleed. The exact cause was never publicly revealed, fueling widespread speculation. Foxx blacked out for 20 days and required emergency brain surgery to save his life. When he finally woke up in a wheelchair, unable to walk or speak, doctors warned him, "This will be the toughest year of your life." Foxx later described seeing a terrifying hot tunnel and admitted he came within inches of death. He had to relearn basic functions and now calls the experience a brutal reminder of life's fragility. In 2010, 24-year-old Australian woman Phoebe Hanjuk was found dead at the bottom of a trash compactor after somehow plunging feet first down a narrow 12th-floor garbage chute. Experts argued the act would have been virtually impossible without assistance, yet her death was ruled accidental and no one was charged. In 2010, a woman tried to smuggle a live, drugged-up tiger cub through a Bangkok airport, hidden inside her checked suitcase among several plush toy tigers. Security only discovered it when an x-ray revealed bones and a tiny beating heart among the pile of lifeless toys. The cub, barely hanging on to life, was rescued and later rehabilitated by a wildlife protection center. In 1951, Mary Reeser was found almost entirely burnt to ashes in her armchair, with only her lower leg, backbone, and shrunken skull still remaining, while the rest of her Florida apartment showed very little fire damage. Though many speculated that it was a case of spontaneous human combustion, experts believe that she accidentally ignited herself while smoking and burned under a rare phenomenon known as the wick effect, where her clothing caught fire and her body fat acted like a human candle, fueling a slow, smoldering blaze that consumed her from within. To this day, the case remains one of the most chilling fire deaths ever recorded. In 1761, a French ship carrying 160 Malaysian slaves crashed into the barren Tromelin Island, resulting in 100 of them drowning while shackled below deck. The surviving 60 slaves were forced to build a raft for the fleeing French crew, who promised they'd return but never did. Stranded on a small desolate sandbar with no trees, no fresh water, and no hope, the abandoned slaves endured 15 harrowing years. They scavenged shipwrecked debris for crude shelter and tools, drank rainwater when it fell, hunted seabirds and turtles to stave off starvation, and managed to keep a fire burning despite there being no trees on the island. When rescue finally arrived in 1776, the island held only 7 emaciated women and a single infant. In February of 1978, 23-year-old college student Stephen Kubacki totally vanished while cross-country skiing near Lake Michigan. His skis, poles, and backpack were found near the lake, and his footprints led onto the ice before abruptly ending, leading authorities to believe he had fallen through and drowned. But 15 months later, in May of 1979, Kubacki reappeared in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, approximately 700 miles away from where he vanished. He claimed to have no memory of the intervening time, stating he woke up in a field wearing unfamiliar clothes and carrying a backpack with maps and other items he didn't recognize. Kubacki never spoke publicly again, and the bizarre case remains unsolved. In 1559, King Henry II of France held a grand jousting tournament to celebrate his daughter's marriage, despite ominous warnings, including a prophecy that he would be pierced through the eye. During the friendly match, a lance splintered on impact, driving a wooden shard through Henry's eye and deep into his brain. Though initially conscious, he soon suffered excruciating pain, seizures, and neurological decline over 10 agonizing days before dying. His gruesome death shocked all of Europe and led to the downfall of jousting in France. In 2015, Selena Gomez was diagnosed with lupus, an autoimmune disease that began attacking her kidneys and led to life-threatening complications. By 2017, her condition had worsened to the point where she required a kidney transplant to survive. Her close friend Francia Raisa volunteered to donate one without Selena even asking, and while the transplant initially appeared to be successful, Gomez suffered a serious complication when the new kidney twisted inside her body, cutting off blood flow. Doctors had to perform emergency surgery, using a vein from her leg to construct a new artery to save the organ. The experience left her with lasting physical and emotional scars, and although it deepened her bond with Raisa at the time, their relationship later became strained, reportedly because of Selena's drinking habits following the surgery, which Raisa felt was disrespectful to her and even dangerous, considering the seriousness of the surgery and the need to protect the donated organ. Known for his roles in Weird Science, Titanic, and Twister, in 2017, actor Bill Paxton underwent heart surgery to repair an aortic aneurysm and replace a valve, a procedure that his family later claimed was high-risk, unconventional, and perhaps not even necessary. The surgeon, Dr. Ali Koinazad, had allegedly been warned by the hospital for his poor judgment in past cases, but he still performed the operation. According to the lawsuit, Paxton was never properly informed of the risks involved or the surgeon's history. In the days following the procedure, Paxton initially appeared to be recovering well and even spoke with his family. But without proper monitoring, and with the surgeon having left the hospital, complications soon arose, including internal bleeding, cardiac instability, and worsening organ function. Despite his declining condition, no adequate care was administered in time. Paxton ultimately suffered a massive stroke and died shortly afterwards, in what his family described as a preventable cascade of medical negligence. In 1982, renowned actor Vic Morrow and child actors Micah Dinley and Renee Chen were killed on the set of Twilight Zone the movie when a helicopter malfunctioned and crashed during a stunt, decapitating both Morrow and Micah while crushing Renee. The scene involved illegal child labor in unsafe conditions, sparking a high-profile trial against director John Landis, who was ultimately acquitted. The haunting photo on the right shows 7-year-old Renee's grandfather collapsing in grief at her funeral, questioning how this could have possibly happened to his talented young granddaughter. The 1897 Battle of Sarigari is considered to be one of the greatest final stands in history. Just 21 soldiers of the Sikh regiment fought an army of 10,000 Afghans and killed more than 600 of them before being defeated. In Florida, 75-year-old exotic animal enthusiast Marvin Hajos was fatally mauled by his pet cassowary, one of the most dangerous birds on the planet. Authorities believe he tripped and fell near the bird, triggering an aggressive response. The cassowary lashed out with its powerful legs, using its razor-sharp inner claws to slash Marvin's neck and torso apart. The man who had raised exotic animals for decades died en route to the hospital. Just last week, 19-year-old Serbian model Tajana Radonjic met a horrifying end during what was supposed to be a scenic parasailing shoot off the coast of Montenegro. Suspended 150 feet in the air above the Adriatic Sea, Tajana began to scream, "Put me down," in terror. Then, in a chilling act, she unbuckled her own harness while still in the air and released herself. Onlookers watched helplessly as her body plunged into the ocean below, likely dying immediately. She had received training just minutes before and showed no obvious signs of distress, making her decision to remove the harness all the more disturbing. Many have speculated that she suffered a sudden panic attack and attempted to ground herself while being disassociated from reality. Her body was recovered from the sea hours later, and parts of the incident were caught on video. Her family has disputed the claim that she panicked or acted irrationally, raising questions about the safety of the harness or if she was given improper instructions. Hulk Hogan was once a towering 6 foot 7 inches, but has lost up to 5 inches of his height due to his back being fused together after decades of punishing his body in the wrestling ring. Over the past decade alone, he's undergone at least 25 surgeries, including 10 on his back, as well as replacements of both knees and hips and operations on his shoulders and neck. Accordingly, Hogan has described feeling like a human medical experiment and now suffers from brutal chronic pain. About 10,000 Facebook users die every day. It's estimated that by the year 2070, the number of dead profiles will outnumber the living ones, and Facebook will become a digital graveyard. Reclusive siblings Homer and Langley Collier lived in a Harlem townhouse and became notorious for their extreme hoarding. After Homer went blind in the 1930s, Langley quit his job to care for him and began compulsively collecting newspapers and junk, believing that Homer would one day get his sight back and need to catch up on the news. They booby-trapped their home with tunnels of debris to keep people out, eventually withdrawing completely from society. In March of 1947, police discovered Homer's body dead from starvation. Langley had died before him, but wasn't found until weeks later due to all the junk in the home. He'd been crushed to death by one of his own traps while trying to bring food to his brother. Growing up in sunny Burbank, California, Tim Burton often felt out of place, finding comfort and solitude at a cemetery at the end of his street, since it was a lonely and emotional place where no one would bother you. It became a quiet refuge where he could think undisturbed by himself, nurturing an early fascination with the macabre that would later define his unique Gothic style. Burton created the character of Edward Scissorhands to reflect his own feelings of isolation, with the image of a man with scissors for hands symbolizing the pain of wanting to connect with others but being unable to do so without causing harm. Rigor mortis stiffens the muscles after death, but once it wears off, limbs can twitch or shift due to muscle relaxation or gas buildup. These movements can be so startling that morticians have reported bodies appearing to sit up, raise their arms, or even turn their heads. In 1957, 22-year-old rock star Jerry Lee Lewis married his teenage first cousin Myra Gale Brown in Mississippi. At the time, Lewis had still been married to another woman, while Myra Gale was only 13 years old and still believed in Santa Claus. After riding a big wave of success with hits like Great Balls of Fire, the scandalous marriage effectively destroyed Lewis's career. Carl Alfalfa Switzer, the former child star of Our Gang, was shot and killed in 1959 during a dispute over a cash reward related to a lost hunting dog. After finding and returning the dog, Switzer demanded $50 from the dog's owner, Moses Stilts, resulting in a heated argument at Stilts' home. Alfalfa allegedly struck Stilts with a clock, prompting Stilts to grab his revolver and shoot Alfalfa in the groin, which he eventually bled out from. While Stilts claimed self-defense, saying Alfalfa threatened him with a knife, a witness later stated that the actor was leaving when he was shot. Despite conflicting accounts, the killing was ruled justifiable and Stilts was never charged. In 2005, Kenneth Pinion, a renowned Boeing engineer known online as Mr. Hands, died after engaging in receptive intercourse with a stallion on a Washington farm, an act that was recorded by a friend. The incident caused a fatal perforation in his colon, and he was dropped off at a local hospital where he died shortly afterwards. As a direct result, the state passed a law in 2006 criminalizing both bestiality and the creation of such videos. Isaac Hayes, the iconic soul singer who played Chef on South Park, left the show in 2006 under mysterious circumstances. A statement was released in his name, claiming he was against the show's mocking of Scientology, which he practiced. However, creators Trey Parker and Matt Stone were skeptical, noting his prior support for the show's satire of other religions. It turned out that at the time, Hayes had just suffered a debilitating stroke that impaired his ability to communicate, and his son later revealed that Isaac's fellow Scientologists spoke on his behalf while he was incapacitated. South Park responded with the episode The Return of Chef, portraying Chef as brainwashed by a cult before he's brutally killed off. The show's creators assembled Chef's lines by splicing together audio clips from previous episodes.
No, Chef, they filled your head with lies. Can't you see that?
Get the hell out of here!
Hayes tragically died in 2008 after being found unconscious next to a running treadmill, the result of another stroke. 4. In 2003, 28-year-old marine biologist Kirsty Brown became the first known human killed by a leopard seal while she was snorkeling near a research station in Antarctica. Without warning, the seal grabbed her by the head and dragged her beneath the icy water, diving down for several minutes and resurfacing with her body before diving down again several times, eventually pulling her as deep as 230 feet. Her colleagues watched helplessly as the powerful predator treated her like prey, mimicking the way it would typically toy with penguins before drowning them. After holding her underwater for 6 minutes, the seal finally released Kirsty, but despite desperate CPR attempts, she never regained consciousness. In 2012, NYPD officer Gilberto Valle was arrested after his wife discovered he'd been posting on fetish forums about kidnapping, torturing, and eating women, including her. He had detailed abduction plans, photos of real women he said he was targeting, and even searched online for recipes for cooking human meat. The FBI found his chats on a site called Dark Fetish Net, where he discussed taking advantage of his police access to stalk victims. Though convicted in 2013 for conspiracy to kidnap, his conviction was later overturned when a judge ruled the evidence was insufficient to prove intent, calling the chats fantasy roleplay. An appeals court upheld the acquittal, stating that while disturbing, his actions were protected under the First Amendment. In 2019, 18-year-old Denali Bremer from Alaska was messaged by a wealthy tycoon named Tyler, who promised her $9 million if she murdered someone and sent him the proof. Convinced the offer was real, Bremer recruited several friends whom she told she would split the money with, and they chose to target 19-year-old Cynthia Hoffman, a developmentally disabled girl who considered Bremer her best friend. The group lured Cynthia on a fake hiking trip to Thunderbird Falls, where they bound her with duct tape and led her to a remote spot. That's when one of the friends shot her in the back of the head while Bremer filmed the murder and sent the footage to Tyler, after which they dumped the body in the river. Authorities uncovered the plot through digital evidence, leading to multiple arrests. Tyler ended up being an unemployed catfisher named Darren Schillmiller who lived in his parents' basement in Indiana. He was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to 99 years in prison, the same sentence handed to Bremer. 1. Creator of Naruto Masashi Kishimoto endured a grueling work schedule that pushed him to the brink of physical and emotional collapse. He routinely worked up to 20 hours per day, leading to several hospitalizations, and even missing the birth of his own child due to crushing deadlines. By the final arcs of Naruto, he admitted to feeling emotionally numb, simply trying to survive the demands of the series. Writing certain death scenes took a drastic personal toll on him, and he received constant death threats from fans over controversial plot decisions. Much of his work was inspired by feelings of deep isolation and insecurity, stemming from his youth and the constant comparisons to his twin brother. These personal struggles bled into Naruto's themes of loneliness, rejection, and the desperate need for acknowledgement. In 1992, Pepsi launched a promotion in the Philippines called Number Fever, offering 1 million pesos to anyone with the winning bottle cap number, a life-changing prize for most people in the country at the time. On May 25th, the winning number announced was 349, but due to a printing error, over 600,000 caps with that number had been distributed. Thousands of people thought they had won, only to be told their prizes wouldn't be honored, and chaos quickly ensued. Riots broke out, Pepsi trucks were bombed, and at least 5 people were killed, including a mother and her child when a grenade was thrown at a delivery truck. Pepsi offered small consolation payments, but the damage was done. The scandal became one of the most infamous marketing disasters in history, and Pepsi never fully regained public trust in the Philippines. During a pro wrestling tag team match in 2015, Rey Mysterio delivered a routine dropkick intended to set up his signature 619 move against Perro Aguayo Jr., but Aguayo slumped lifelessly onto the ropes. Unbeknownst to everyone at first, Aguayo had suffered a fatal cervical spine injury, likely caused by the whiplash to his neck from the dropkick. The match eerily continued on for several minutes before anyone realized that something was seriously wrong. Aguayo was soon rushed to the hospital, but was pronounced dead shortly afterwards. The cause of death was later determined to be cardiac arrest, due to a cervical stroke caused by 3 fractured vertebrae. The coroner stated that the fractures took place at 2 different moments of impact and that Aguayo died almost immediately. Although Mysterio bore no blame, the incident left him devastated since Aguayo had been his longtime friend. It remains one of the only times a pro wrestler died during a match from in-ring trauma. Celine Dion lost both her husband and brother to cancer within the same week in 2016. She performed shortly after their deaths, later saying the stage was the only place she didn't feel pain. In 2021, a 45-year-old man named Thangula Satish died in India after his rooster, armed with a 3-inch blade for an illegal cockfight, slashed his groin as it tried to escape, severing a major artery and causing him to bleed out before he reached the hospital. The rooster was briefly detained at a police station before being transferred to a local farm. In 1974, the mutilated body of a woman was found neatly placed on a beach blanket in the dunes of Provincetown, Massachusetts. Her hands were missing, her teeth removed, and her skull was crushed on one side, yet her hair was styled and her toenails painted. Known for decades only as the Lady of the Dunes, her identity remained a mystery despite widespread speculation. Over the years, she was linked to escaped convicts, mob enforcers, and even a missing extra from the film set of Jaws. Finally, in 2022, nearly 50 years later, forensic genealogy identified her as 37-year-old Ruth Marie Terry from Tennessee, and her husband, a conman with a dark past, was named the likely killer. Adult star Faye Reagan appeared in over 400 films before vanishing into obscurity following her 2014 retirement. Her life quickly spiraled into constant legal troubles, hard drug use, and homelessness. On May 7th of this year, she mysteriously disappeared from East Charleston Boulevard in Las Vegas, a corridor infamous for crime and desperation. Last seen wearing green sweatpants and carrying a backpack, Reagan has not been seen or heard from since. Photographer Sam Davis captured the incredible moment a snake eel burst out from a heron's stomach while the bird was still flying, having chewed its way through the heron's throat using its pointed tail. Both animals were likely fatally injured. In the 90s, Disney planned to open a theme park called Disney's America near the Civil War battlefields in Virginia. A Disney executive said the park would let visitors feel what it was like to be a slave. Amid intense public outrage and political pressure, Disney ended up scrapping the disastrous project. In the summer of 1974, 18-year-old Disneyland cast member Deborah Gale was assigned to the newly opened America Sings ride in Tomorrowland, a rotating theater that featured animatronic animals singing songs from different eras of American history. The attraction had only been open for 9 days when something went horribly wrong during her shift on July 8th. At some point during the rotation, Deborah became caught in a narrow gap between a moving theater wall and a stationary platform. As the mechanism turned, she was crushed in the machinery, likely killing her immediately. Guests seated nearby heard her screams followed by a loud thud, but tragically mistook both for sound effects from the show. In 2009, a member of Al-Qaeda attempted to assassinate Saudi Prince Mohammed bin Nayef by hiding a pound of explosives inside his anus, an unprecedented tactic at the time. Disguised as a remorseful militant surrendering during Ramadan, the terrorist was allowed close access to the prince and even passed through metal detectors without detection. Once face to face, he detonated the device, but his own body absorbed most of the blast, killing him instantly while only slightly injuring the startled prince. In August of 1993, 4-year-old Derek Roby had been walking alone to summer camp when 13-year-old Eric Smith lured him into the woods under the guise of showing him a new shortcut. Once they were out of sight, Smith strangled Derek until he was unconscious, brutally smashed his head with a large rock, then poured Kool-Aid into the boy's wounds. Before fleeing the scene, Smith removed one of Derek's shoes and scattered the contents of his lunchbox all around him, creating a disturbing and almost ritualistic display that baffled investigators. The child's body was found later that day, just yards from the park he never made it to. Smith later confessed and was tried as an adult despite his young age, receiving 9 years to life in prison. He was denied parole 10 times over the years, with Derek's family attending each hearing to oppose his release. After 27 years behind bars, Smith was finally granted parole in 2022, sparking debates about whether someone capable of such violence at 13 can ever truly be reformed. In 2012, a freak accident saved this woman's life in the craziest way possible. 42-year-old Donna Barber was at a family gathering in Arkansas when her teenage son accidentally shot her straight in the neck with a bow and arrow. The arrow pierced the side of her throat just inches from her carotid artery, close enough that she could feel her pulse pounding against the shaft. For a moment, Dawn remained standing in shock before collapsing in a pool of her own blood. As her family screamed in panic, some believing they just witnessed her death, she was rushed to the hospital in critical condition. But during emergency scans, doctors made a chilling discovery. Nestled deep in her neck, not far from the arrow's path, was a cancerous tumor growing in her thyroid. It hadn't caused any symptoms yet, and without the arrow, it likely would have gone unnoticed until it was far too late. Surgeons carefully removed the arrow then the tumor in a single surgery, and Dawn miraculously went on to make a full recovery. In 2002, New York City bartender Sean Doyle was out drinking with his friend Michael Wright when a drunken argument suddenly broke out after Wright accused Doyle of flirting with his girlfriend. In a fit of rage, Wright threw Doyle down an open manhole and he immediately started screaming in agony from below. The shaft led down to a steam tunnel where a ruptured vent had caused the water temperature to reach an estimated 300 degrees Fahrenheit. Doyle survived the fall and was pleading for help while trapped in the boiling water, but the heat and steam were far too intense for rescuers to reach him. Witnesses reported hearing his screams echoing through the streets like a whistling tea kettle, then abruptly stopping. His body was finally recovered 4 hours later, and the medical examiner later described the scene as one of the worst she'd ever seen. The metal of his belt buckle had partially fused with his pelvis, and steam had filled up his lungs until they completely ruptured. His skin had completely peeled away, and his organs were essentially steamed like a lobster. A French woman was scammed out of 830,000 euros after falling for an elaborate scheme involving an AI-generated version of Brad Pitt. It began in 2023 when someone posing as Pitt's mother contacted her online, followed by Brad himself claiming he was battling kidney cancer and desperately needed financial help or else he was gonna die. He sent AI-generated hospital photos showing himself bruised and hooked up to machines. Over time, the woman was manipulated into believing they were in a secret relationship, one he swore had to be kept quiet because of restrictive Hollywood contracts. She even believed they were engaged and that he planned to move to France to marry her. She wired him thousands for fake medical bills and customs fees for luxury gifts that he sent her but never arrived. After her husband divorced her over the delusion, she sent the scammers 775,000 euros she received from the settlement. Despite repeated warnings, she insisted it was true love, until she eventually realized she had thrown her entire life away for a fake person. Pop icon Claude Francois, often hailed as the French Elvis, met a gruesome end in 1978 when he tried to fix a flickering light bulb while standing in a bathtub filled with water. The 39-year-old received a severe electric shock that immediately fried his internal organs and stopped his heart. A family preparing to bury a loved one was shocked to find that one of the burial plots they had purchased was already occupied. Despite extensive efforts, no one could determine who the mystery individual was or how they ended up buried there. Rather than exhume the remains, the family decided to let the unknown person rest in peace, marking the grave with a headstone that simply read "Random Person." In the 1960s, the CIA was looking for creative ways to spy on the Russians without being noticed. That's when they came up with the genius idea to use a cat to record Russian conversations. A veterinary surgeon implanted a microphone in the cat's ear and a radio transmitter at the base of its skull. The plan was for the cat to be released near a Soviet embassy and innocuously record any dialogue amongst the men. But after 5 years of research and $20 million in funding, the cat was struck and killed by a taxicab almost immediately. While filming Jackass No. 2, Johnny Knoxville attempted a motocross backflip that went horribly wrong when the bike crashed down handlebars first directly onto his crotch. Knoxville was immediately rushed to the hospital, where doctors discovered the trauma had torn his urethra and partially detached it from his bladder. For the next 3 years, he had to perform painful self-catheterization twice daily to keep the torn tissue from sealing shut. He later described the sensation of pushing a tube through the raw, unhealed tissue as like jamming a knife into an open wound every single day. The risk of infection was constant, and any mistake could have led to permanent urinary dysfunction or worse. In 1912, 4-year-old Bobby Dunbar vanished from his family's tent during a camping trip in Louisiana, sparking a frantic 8-month search. He was eventually found in Mississippi with another family who insisted that he was actually their son, Bruce Anderson. But sadly, the Andersons didn't have the money to fight this in court, so they lost custody of the child. The Dunbars took the boy home and raised him as their son Bobby Dunbar for the remainder of his life. Decades later, in 2004, DNA testing confirmed that the boy they took from the Andersons was not Bobby Dunbar, as the real Bobby Dunbar's fate remains unknown to this day. Juana Barraza, known as the Little Old Lady Killer, was a Mexican professional wrestler who murdered at least 16 elderly women in Mexico City between 1998 and 2006. She posed as a social worker to gain access to her victims' homes, then strangled them, often with cords or her bare hands, and stole their belongings. Her strength and wrestling background, performing under the name the Lady of Silence, made her attacks especially brutal. Panic gripped the city as authorities struggled to solve the case until she was finally caught fleeing a murder scene. Barraza later confessed to deep resentment toward her abusive mother and was sentenced to 759 years in prison. Vlad the Impaler earned his name through the methodical terror he inflicted on his enemies. When the mighty Ottoman Empire invaded his territory in 1462, they were met with a nightmarish sight: a forest of 20,000 impaled corpses mounted on tall wooden stakes and left to rot beneath the scorching summer sun. The victims, captured soldiers, peasants, and anyone who defied Vlad, including children, were arranged with chilling precision, their decomposing bodies spreading a stench of death for miles. Upon seeing this grotesque display, Sultan Mehmed II was so disturbed that he ordered his army of 100,000 men to retreat.